In today's video, I will go over how to paint the Cadian 707th Infantry Regiment color scheme. First step is to base coat your model with a primer. For this, I've actually chosen the Zandri Dust Spray Primer from Games Workshop. I got a nice even coating across the entire model, and then from here I'll begin the base coat of my other colors. Next, we'll do a base coat of Castellan green. This will be applied to all the armor and part of the boots on the model. Make sure to thin down your paint and apply it in two nice thin coats to get a nice even finish on the model. You can see here it's going on nice and smooth on the helmet, and then we'll move on to the las rifle and body armor and boots as well. Next, we'll want to base coat all of our leather parts with Rhinox hide. Use this on places like the boots, the belt, and the chin straps on the helmet, as well as the straps on the backpack that hold the pouches shut. This model is special as it also has an eye patch. I'll be painting that with Rhinox hide as well. Depending on how you're wanting your leather to work, you can either do your Rhinox hide in one or two thin coats. By doing only one thin coat, you can allow some of the Zandri dust to show through with the translucency of the paint, and this will help give the effect of a nice, softer, warmer leather. I typically go for darker leather, so I will generally do two thin coats of Rhinox hide. In this step, we'll be adding a layer of white scar to the various Imperial iconography on the Cadians. This will be things like the wing skull on the helmet and the las rifle, as well as if you have canteens to add the white scar to the Imperial symbol on the canteens. Next, we'll be applying Leadbelcher, but to do metallic paints, we should be aware of which brushes we are using. For this, I have a Games Gear synthetic brush that's specially made for inks and metallic paints. This is because of the pigments in metallic paints can wear out your natural hair brushes a lot faster. When applying Leadbelcher, we need to place it on things such as the magazine as well as the barrel for your las rifle, and other various equipment such as the handle on your knife. Make sure to take care that you grab all of your metallics at once, since this will be a switching of your brushes. Now we'll need to apply Bugmans glow to the flesh of our model. This is if you want to do a light skin tone model. Of course, you can do many other colors and many other skin tones as well. So for this, apply your Bugmans glow nice and thin to make sure that you don't lose that detail on your hands and your faces of your Cadian models. Next, we're going to do our first shade. For this, we're going to use Agrax Earthshade. This is a wonderful color as it works well with most of the warm tones for the Cadian color scheme here for the 707th. What we're going to be doing is a recess shade. That means we'll be applying the shade into the deep seams and creases of both the uniform and the armor. You can also use Agrax Earthshade with Bugman's Glow to help create a darker skin tone, although we won't be doing that here in this painting tutorial. So when you apply this, make sure to get the deepest seams and creases, and then also come back and get the more subtle folds, especially of the fabric for the uniform. You can apply this as well to things such as the leather to help create darker areas there to create more depth on those parts of the model. With your shade, make sure that it doesn't pull up too much within your recesses or on areas of the model. If it does, just use your brush to pull a little bit away. Brushes are kind of like sponges and can help soak up liquid as well. Now we're going to apply a layer of Cadian Fleshtone thinly over top of the Bugman's Glow. Make sure to use a wet palette or to thin this down with a little bit of water so that it applies smoothly over your highly detailed areas of skin such as the face and hands. Now that we have Cadian Fleshtone on the model, we're going to apply a layer of Reikland Fleshshade onto the face and hands as well. You can do this directly out of the pot. Just make sure that you load your brush up properly so it's not too overly saturated, and then apply it to the areas of flesh. Make sure to work it in there so you don't get large pools of shade, and to make sure to distribute it evenly across the skin to help create those depths and shadows. Now we're going to apply another layer of Cadian Fleshtone. This time we'll be thinning this down a little bit more so that it's translucent. Apply the Cadian Fleshtone to the raised areas of the model's skin, places like the cheeks, the nose, and the fingers. Make sure to avoid the recesses so you can keep the darker colors you've already applied. Apply Kislev flesh to the most raised areas of the flesh. These will be places such as the bridge of the nose, the tops of the cheeks, or the knuckles on the hands. Now that our skin is complete, we're going to apply Ushabti bone to the khaki uniforms of the Cadians. Make sure to thin this paint down so it goes on nice and smooth and has the translucency to it. We're going to apply this to the raised areas such as the folds of the uniform, the corners, or any other raised areas. I also like to apply this on the corners of the elbows and on the knees to help create some more definition to the model. You can also take this time to use the Ushabti bone to clean up any areas where your Agrax Earthshade may have gone farther than you wanted it to. This is a great way to create some more highlights on your fabric, while also cleaning up your past work. Now we're going to apply Screaming Skull to the corners and the most highlighted areas of the fabric. This will be places such as the folds of the uniform at the corners, such as just below the waist where the belt is, the highest areas such as the wrists on the upper part of the model, the places where you think sunlight may be coming downward would strike the most. So highlight those areas and really get that extra definition in there. Apply Straken green to the armor. Get around all of the edges, such as on the shoulder pad. Get all of the raised areas and all of the fine edges on the body armor itself, on the flak vest, and also on the helmet on the raised areas there and around the edges. This is also a good time where you can clean up any of the Agrax Earthshade that might have spilled over the corners or in areas you didn't want on your body armor, or go back and clean it up with Castellan green. For the finer highlights, we will be using Nurgling green for the armor. Apply this to the corners, such as on the shoulder pads, or on the highest raised area of the shoulder pad to create a light effect. For places like the last gun or the chest armor, apply just a dot on the very corner of each of the pieces that are exposed, especially on the upper part of those pieces. Although my camera isn't good to pick up the detail here, I want to let you know that I use Ulthuan gray for my eyes and the teeth. This is a bit of an off-white. I don't believe in using pure white for these places on the model, as our actual teeth and our eyes aren't pure white either. So I think this helps creates a more realistic definition of these items on the model. Make sure to use your finest tipped brush in order to get in there to get the eyes and teeth done well. You may need to go back and clean this up with some of your flesh paints. Now for basing. You'll need a tool to apply the basing material to the model. I like to use Games Workshop's tool that they sell, and I also like to use their sterling mud, and that's what I'll be showing you here today. Open your pot of sterling mud and use your scraper tool to pull some out and apply it to the bottom of the model. Notice how we haven't done the boots yet, or the other leather. This is because if you accidentally overdo your basing on the model, we can go back later and actually clean that up with some of the leather highlights. Make sure to get the entire base covered and definitely push the sterling mud up against the boots to make sure there's no gaps. Next, we're going to apply a layer of Steel Legion Drab as a dry brush to our dried sterling mud. For this, I like to use an old paintbrush that's seen the end of its normal life use, where its tip just won't stay pointed anymore. I'll apply some to the brush, dry it off a little bit onto a towel, and then apply it to the model by going back and forth across the sterling mud to get the highlighted areas. What this also allows me to do is to reach into some of the recesses to create pockets of dried soil that are somewhat below the raised areas, this way creating more variation in my base. Now we're going to apply a dry brush of Ushabti bone over top of the Steel Legion Drab. For this step, we'll do it a little bit lighter, using our brush to only catch the most raised areas of the base. So this way it looks like the dirt and soil that's higher up is a little more dried out, and the mud that's a little lower is probably more saturated. Just make sure that your brush isn't too oversaturated and loaded when you go to apply, to make sure that you don't accidentally cover up too much of your Steel Legion Drab. For the base, I'll be using Steel Legion Drab to paint the rim. I think this is a great way to continue the earth tones of the base down to your gaming mat. Other options you could do would be gray or black. With the basing completed, we're going to move on to the leather now. Our first layer will be Skrag brown. Apply this thinly to all of the raised areas and the fine edges of your leather boots and your pouches and your belt. You can also use this to create areas of definition that don't exist within your leather. I like to paint this around the toes of the boots to help create some definition there, create some additional lines on the back of my boots as well, and on the top and bottom of my belt to help create some definition between the transition and the khaki fabric. Another thing that you can do is to thin this down real nicely, get your brush to a fine pointed tip, and then make small lines onto your leather to help look like the leather has been cracked or bent and has been worn a little. Now we'll be applying Deathclaw brown to the leather. This will be applied to the finest corners, the most raised areas, or other places to create greater definition on that leather. You can also use this to create more variation in the worn areas of the leather, the same way that we used small, tiny, thin lines to create cracked areas on the pouches and the belts. Now that we're near the end, we'll go ahead and apply one more fine layer of white scar over top of the Imperial insignias to create more definition. Apply this to the very top of the skull and wings on the helmet, as well as the last rifle. And if your Cadian has a canteen pouch, the same thing there. The next step is applying decals to the model. For this, I use Microset, Microsol, and you will also need fresh, clean water. You'll need also an X-Acto knife and the decals you wish to apply. For this, I'll be using the 707th decals that come on the standard Cadian sheet, as well as the Cadian gate symbol as well. What you'll want to do is cut out the symbols you need, wet them in your clean water, and then lay the decals down to allow the water to soak into the paper and the decals, helping to loosen them from the sheet. Next, we'll want to prepare the surface for the transfer. This is where we'll want to use Microset. Take a clean brush and dab it into your Microset. Then, apply the Microset to the surface you wish to place the decal on. You can slide the transfers onto the surface you wish to apply them either by using tweezers or a brush. When applying the decal to a curved or uneven surface, make sure to apply it as smooth as possible the first time around. We can finish smoothing it out later on to fit the contours of the surface using our micro saw. Once the decal has dried, now it's time to apply the micro saw. Dip your clean brush into the micro saw and then apply it liberally over top of the decal. Let it set until it dries. If you notice the decal still has raised areas or bubbles along the edges, apply more micro saw to help dissolve the decal and to get it to apply evenly and smoothly onto the surface that you're applying it to. Don't worry when applying your micro saw if the decal moves a little. You can just shift it right back into place using the micro saw and it'll still set nice and even. Once you have the decal smoothly down on the surface, now we're going to be applying Lahmian medium in order to get rid of any shining areas or the edges of the transfer itself, so it looks like it is a painted on finished symbol for your model. Just dip your clean brush into your Lahmian medium and then apply liberally over top of the decal. Make sure to apply the Lahmian medium to the entire surface that your decal is located on. This way, in case the Lahmian medium were to create some type of blemish on the model because it is a matte finish, that this way it's smooth across the entire surface. After completing your basing with things such as rocks, flocking, or pre-made grass tufts, your models are complete. Your infantry squads are now ready to run out on the battlefield, shouting that Cadia stands and fighting for the Emperor. I hope you've enjoyed this painting tutorial and found it beneficial. Please like and subscribe for more material, and I hope to see you all in the future.